are in the last chapter of John. Huzzah! Yay! Thanks
Yay.
God. And I was thinking that this would be fairly straightforward and we'd go through it pretty fast. But as I was doing some of the notes yesterday, I'm not entirely sure anymore.
Uh-oh.
But we'll find out. We'll find out. So, per usual, I will try to situate this in the context of the gospel. So, this is one of the anomalies in the gospel, or not exactly an anomaly, but since chapter 21 is an epilogue, so this isn't really fitting the exact structure of the rest of the book. So it's added on to the rest. It is trying to give you further explanations and examples of what's going on, but it's not really trying to complement other passages. So even with the prologue in John, and the prologue in the Gospel of John is John chapter 1, verses 1 to 18. So in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, the Word was God. And then it goes all the way to verse 18, and where we receive grace upon grace through Jesus. So we have that as the prologue. In the epilogue, there's not exactly those types of themes. Like there's one that you can kind of connect to it, and I can try and connect a couple other things to prologue, but it's really hard to do so. It's just kind of passing reference. So the prologue would have things of light, or Jesus being the light of the world, or us being the children of God, or becoming children of God by grace. Jesus being made flesh, being sent by the Father, and creation and all that. So you might see a verse or two in the last chapter offhandedly referenced in it, but trying to directly reference it, not really. And this has led to some discussion among scholars, because it's only the scholars who would really be discussing this, about whether or not chapter 21 is original to the book. Maybe John didn't even write it, and they're saying. And that's pretty ludicrous, because like it sounds like John throughout, like it's very like him in terms of style, vocabulary, etc., etc. So it sounds like John. And more importantly, for actual like quantifiable evidence, all the manuscripts we have of the New Testament, not one manuscript we have of the Gospel of John suggests that there is a 20-chapter version of the Gospel. So yeah, there's no real reason to say that chapter 21 isn't original. And if it isn't, it's definitely written by John, at which point we would say, well, maybe he wrote it in later life to explain a detail or two. But yeah, it's him. Questions, comments about scholars being scholars and trying to challenge biblical authority. Now, okay. So now we're going with, well, what's the time now on this? So when is this happening? Or maybe I should rephrase that as the when. Well, when is this happening?
After Easter.
Yes, there we go. So after Easter Sunday, we could even go a little bit further, and after appearance to Thomas. So that was at the 1 week mark, appearance to Thomas. And we can say that with a lot of fortitude, because one of John's notes there, so this is a note in chapter 21, verse 14, which says, and this is the third of his appearances, at which point Easter Sunday to the disciples, that's the first appearance to the disciples, second appearance to the disciples was with Thomas, and now this is the third. So we have that, yes. We also know that this is before ascension, because Jesus is still here with the disciples, of course. So that's 40 days after the resurrection. Or this is 7 days. afterwards. So we know it's sometime between 7 days after the resurrection and 40 days after the resurrection. We also know that the disciples, and this is more of the where, which is down here. Be consistent, use capitals. There we go. So for the where, we know that this is at Galilee. So there needs to be at least a little bit of travel time from, this is in Jerusalem, and the ascension is just outside of Jerusalem. They were staying in Jerusalem. And then they went out to the Mount of Olives, so near Bethany. So that was a little ways away from Jerusalem. But you could say both of these, Jerusalem. This is in Galilee. So there needs to be at least some travel time. It would probably be a few days journey if they were to go, because this is before you get very nice asphalt roads and modern day vehicles. So if they're on foot, well, you need to keep moving. You probably stop here or there to buy some food or get some food somehow. And then you'd have to camp for the night. So
It's the Sea of Tiberias, but I don't think the Sea of Galilee.
yes, I'll get to that. It's actually a very John thing to do for that name. Okay. Okay. So we know sometime in between here. There's probably a few days even further either side, because they have to journey all the way to Galilee, then they have to journey all the way back to Jerusalem. And because Peter and at least some of the other disciples were waiting around for Jesus in Galilee, and Peter goes like, let's fish. Or actually, he actually says, I want to fish. Then everybody joins him. Possibly they're waiting around for days until Jesus was there. And it's not all the disciples, so maybe they're also waiting on others to arrive or something. Maybe they didn't travel as one group. But yeah, they might be like smack dab in the middle there. So maybe around 20 days after Jesus resurrects, that's when it appears to them here. We don't know for sure, but around there. Okay. So as for place, we have Galilee, and as you were saying, Sea of Tiberias. So this is one of the reasons why we suggest that the Gospel of John is written later than the other Gospels, because the Sea of Galilee wasn't really accepted as the Sea of Tiberias until a little bit later on. Anybody know who Tiberius is?
Emperor?
Yes, the Roman emperor at the time of Jesus' death and resurrection. Now, he's been reigning for quite some time. In fact, the dates of his reign are 14 AD to 37 AD. So he's been around for a while. And most likely what's going on with this is to gain favor from the emperor, they decide, Jews decide to name a city after the emperor. So this is along the shore of Galilee. I've been to Tiberias. It's one of the major sites there now, like major cities around the Sea of Tiberias or Sea of Galilee. But yeah, they basically founded a city. Now, at the beginning, it wasn't really that favorable to the emperor because it was right next to the cemetery. So technically, if you go too far, it's unclean. So like, here's this nice gesture towards the emperor, but we know what it really saying. However, after the fall of Jerusalem, which happened in 70 AD, so quite some time after Tiberius died, and he only stopped reigning in 37 AD. He was still alive. He's still alive for a while. But after 70 AD, Jerusalem destroyed by the Romans, and the Jews were trying to find other places to go, where to be settled down, and Tiberias, the city of Tiberias, happened to be one of those sites, and it became the spot for rabbinical teaching in the land of Israel, now renamed Palestine by the Romans because they're doing the screw you to the Jews. we won't even call it by the name of your people anymore. Anyways. And eventually, like with that city being more and more well known, later on in the first century, that's when the sea it was actually starting to be called the Sea of Tiberias rather than just the Sea of Galilee. So again, one of the probable reasons why the Gospel of John was written late, people would be more familiar with the name Sea of Tiberias if this was later on in the first century, probably after 70 AD. But do we have an exact date for the writing of John? No. But usually the date of composition is around 80 to 85 AD. I know some people looking at maps now.
Just trying to figure out where it is in relation to modern day maps. It's
So-
still as part of Israel, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So if you think of, so this would be the Dead Sea. You have Jerusalem over here. You have to go across mountains. You have Capernaum over here at the top of the Sea of Galilee. This would be most likely where the disciples are here, because they're hanging out with Peter, and Peter actually has a house in Capernaum. So, as for the where, we're probably starting out in Capernaum. And it's been one of the places of action in the Gospels, like one of the main places of action in the Gospels. So this would be Capernaum up here, and then Tiberias is right here on the west side. Pretty much like exactly midway between the north and south ends of the Sea of Galilee. Not that the Sea of Galilee is terribly big. I'm trying to think of a way to relate the size. The Sea of Galilee, like the actual area, is probably the size of a square malt. So it's not like a huge sea. Actually, maybe even the square malt's a bit big for that. But yeah, it's not terribly big. Anyways, oh yeah. So why are they there? Well, we find that when the angels appear to the women at the tomb Sunday morning, they say, Jesus is going on ahead of you to Galilee. And then the women, they run away. And then another angel appears to them. And he goes, oh, sorry, no, not another, what am I saying? Then Jesus appears to them when they're going away. And then Jesus tells them, I'm going to Galilee, tell everybody. And we also have in the Gospel of John, Jesus appearing to Mary Magdalene and he's saying, tell the other disciples I'm going to Galilee. Or Tiberias. So Jesus is definitely directing the disciples here. And we go, why Jesus? And then he doesn't tell us. Because that is what Jesus does. In any case, we do have them appearing there. And the Gospel of Matthew will say that all 11 are present with Jesus on the mountain. That's the very end of the Gospel of Matthew. It's that all 11 are with Jesus on the mountain. And then in Gospel of John, you only have 7 disciples at the scene. So probably what's going on is Jesus appears to the 7 there, and he tells them whatever he needs to tell them. Then the rest of them gather together, the rest of the 11, then they go up on the mountain. So they're probably there in the Galilee region for at least a bit. Yeah. Other questions, comments? Okay. So now, chapter 21, in relation to other parts of the Gospel of John. So even though it doesn't really connect to the prologue that much, This does connect to a couple other areas. So this is let's go with connections to the disciples first. So we have three main events here in chapter 21. So John chapter 21, I'll write it up here. John 21. We have a miraculous catch of fish. Thank you. Yes. Then we have the reading statement of Peter. Of course, that's with 3 times of Peter. Then we have a comment on John himself, because at the end of Peter's reading statement, Jesus then says, and this and this and this is going to happen to you, and John gives the note. Jesus was telling him the manner of his death, and then Peter's like, what? And he goes like, well, what about John over there? And then we don't have John's reaction. Maybe he was going like, what are you dragging me into this? But Jesus gives the comment, well, if he stays until I return, what is that to you? And then apparently that sparked some controversy where people were suggesting maybe John is staying alive until the second coming. So he gives a notice like, Jesus didn't say that he would stay alive to this, he just said, what is it to you? So we have these 3 parts coming in with John chapter 21. So with the disciples at the beginning, so they're fishing. Do you remember how the disciples were called? Like where were they?
Fishing something?
Fishy.
Well, a few of them, yes. Do you remember which ones? I'll give you points. I don't know what the points are good for, but I'll give you points if you remember which ones.
Peter, James, and John.
And
Andrew.
Andrew, there we go. Excellent. You got 4 points, Laura. I don't know what they're for. Yeah, at least a few of them were fishermen. We don't know where some of the others came from. Like the other one that we know absolutely for sure would be Matthew, who's the tax collector. But yeah, we have those 4. We have Matthew, the tax collector, and then we don't really know exactly where the other ones come from. Simon the Zealot, there's some question as to whether he was with the faction of the Zealots, who are basically kind of a revolutionary, even you could say terrorist cell against the Romans. But yeah, we don't know for sure if that meant that he was with the Zealots or if he was just extra zealous in his faith. But yes, they're fishing.
Luke was a physician, wasn't he?
Yes, but he's not one of the 12. Well, and we also don't know exactly if he was a physician. We usually say that he was a physician because he's using technical terms, and some of them are related to body parts. So we know that he had advanced education, and we're guessing that he was a physician. But he wasn't one of the 12.
Oh.
No, he was. No, Luke was a companion of Saint Paul. So there's a possibility that Luke was part of the 72 sent out partway through Jesus' ministry, but we don't know for sure. Luke was also most likely a Gentile, at which point why he would be sent out with the others in the 72 to Jews. It's a little bit confusing. So some of this is shrouded in mystery. Luke, like John, like they don't comment too much about themselves. Like John doesn't even give his name in the gospel. So yeah, Luke doesn't talk too much about himself, but he does mention him kind of coming in the book of Acts. And that's even with that's difficult, because at a certain point in time, Luke switches from they were doing this and so was doing that and they were doing this to we were doing this and we went there, and that's how you know Luke actually came along. Because he doesn't really talk about how he comes into it. Yeah, so So who mentions the disciples being fishermen? Which one of the gospel writers? Or one or more gospel?
Is it Matthew?
Yes. Absolutely. And Mark.
And Mark. Yeah.
And Luke. But not
Mhm.
John. John doesn't mention it. In fact, John isn't talking about fishing at all until this point in time in the gospel. Even though John himself is a fisherman, he does not bring it up at all.
Maybe he thought it was implied.
Well, I don't think he really thought it was important at this point in time.
Yeah.
Basically, John, when he's talking about the first disciples being called, he doesn't talk about all of them being called, he just talks about a few. It's more centered on what's going on with the baptism of John the Baptist. So after Jesus is baptized by John the Baptist, then Jesus appears to Andrew and John, and then Andrew tells his brother Peter, and Philip comes in, and Philip tells Nathaniel, and then that's the only real mentions of the disciples early on in the Gospel of John. But no mention of fish. It was more in connection with the baptism of John. Yeah. So this is the first time that they're fishing. So the only other time fish come up in the Gospel of John is
After the resurrection?
well, other time. Like this is after the resurrection.
Okay.
Miracle of the fishes?
But miracle.
The feeding of the 5,000?
Where he fed 5,000?
Yes, so it's the miracle of the 5,000 because you had 5 loaves and you had 2 fish. So that's the only other time fish are mentioned in the entire gospel. And this is also interesting because I was looking at this yesterday, and the specific word for fish, there's a couple different words here in chapter 21 being used, and when Jesus uses the word fish, that is the one that appears in the feeding of the 5,000, not the other word that they're using for fish, or that John's using for fish. Like, this seems to be pretty pointed. Anyways, also want to guess the only other time a boat comes up in the Gospel of John, because they're fishing on a boat.
Oh, the sea, when there's storm and they were at the sea and we're afraid of they're going to die, they're going to perish. Jesus walks on
That
water.
doesn't come up in the Gospel of John.
Oh,
The
sorry.
calming of the sea doesn't come up in the Gospel of John. There's another miracle on the sea.
Jesus walks on water.
Yes, Jesus walking on water.
Mhm.
Do you know when that takes place?
Sea of Galilee?
When?
After his death.
Walking on water? No.
No, before his death.
Way before, yeah.
Forgot.
Wasn't that after he
After
sent
the-
the demons out of the guy at the Gerasenes?
Was it
No,
April said?
no, it wasn't. It's immediately after the feeding of the 5,000.
Oh,
What
okay.
happens is Jesus feeds the 5,000. They try to
Oh, and
make
then he
the
goes.
messianic king against Jesus' will because they want an earthly king, not a heavenly king. So Jesus slips away. The disciples go away on the boat, and then they're there on the boat during the night, and that's when Jesus walks on water. So when they get to the shore in the morning, that's when you have Jesus, I am the bread of life speech. Because people are like, we were searching for you all night to make you king. What's going on? Yeah. So the other time the boat is mentioned is with walking on water, which is related to feeding the 5,000. So also oddly specific, John uses the definite article with the boat here, so he says the boat instead of a boat that they're going fishing on here in John chapter 21. So is this the same boat? Is it Peter's boat? Did Peter have a boat in Capernaum? That's the boat that he went out and they was walking along. Who knows? Well, God knows. It doesn't really help us too much. Anyways,
So, Pastor, then is it possible that these fishermen, besides becoming fisher of men, continued to fish now and
it's possible, but we don't really have a record of it.
then? Okay.
Like the only record of them doing this after they've been called by Jesus is here. It's the only time. Yes, we'll also go to let's say so with reinstatement of Peter, there's the idea of feed my sheep. When does this come up when do sheep come up in the Gospel of John? There's only one other place.
The Jesus being the good shepherd.
Yes, the I am the good shepherd speech. But he also has another I am statement at the same time, because can the sheep run around frolicking in the field all day? Don't they need protection? Yes, I am the gate. And that's when we have a lot of, and I am the gate speech has a lot of words that reappear when Peter actually disowns Jesus. Because Peter was standing outside of the gate, waiting to get in, before John has the gatekeeper come over and get him to come in. And then Peter is around a fire of live coals. And the fire of live coals actually occurs here in John chapter 21 because Jesus is heating up the fish on this fire of live coals.
Oh.
Yeah. So we have lots and lots of connections here. Yeah.
Why do you call it
To trigger memories?
why do you call it fire of life rather than
Fire of live coals.
of live? Oh, cool. Okay.
Coals.
I thought you said fire of life, and I go, what?
Well, that would be a different thing. I don't think that occurs.
Okay.
No worries. Okay.
Was that to maybe jog Peter's memory?
Possibly, there's probably going to be a whole bunch of reasons why Jesus Christ is doing it. And if John is mentioning it, it's going to be jogging our memory, not specifically Peter. Anyway, and also, and I find this kind of interesting, with Peter's denials, which actually do come up, because so Peter denies Jesus 3 times. Denies 3 times. So of course, how often does Jesus try to say, Peter, do you love me?
3 times.
3 times. And when this occurs, when Peter's denying Jesus, John has a pause in between the first and the last 2 denials. And then here, in the reinstatement of Peter, there's actually a switching of verbs between the first 2 and the last question of Jesus. Because Jesus goes, Peter, do you sacrificially love me? And Peter goes, Lord, you know I love you as a friend. Peter, so Jesus asked again, Peter, do you sacrificially love me? Lord, I love you as a friend. Peter, do you love me as a friend? Oh, Lord, Peter was feeling hurt. Oh, Lord, you know I love you as a friend. Okay, now feed my sheep. Because the words that are appearing there is going back and forth between agape, which is the more sacrificial love, and phile, which is a deep love for a friend. So Peter's using the weaker word, so then Jesus switches to the weaker word for Peter. Yeah. So we find little shifts there as well. As for the comment on John, like there is no direct parallel with this anywhere, but John does bring up comments here and there about this and that, so that's about as close as you can get. Oh no, I should bring up. This is also kind of on the boat, where you remember how somebody outran the other person on the way to the tomb.
Yeah.
Who
So-
outran who?
John outran Peter.
Yes, and of course John's the only one who comments on this in the gospel. So with the boat, who do you think recognizes Jesus first?
John.
John does. Who does he tell?
Peter.
What does Peter do?
Jump in the water.
He immediately
said-
goes into the water and is like, "What? Good fault this vegetable. What are you doing?"
Pastor, I'm looking at King James, and it says that Peter was naked and he grabbed something to wear so he could jump in the water. Is that true?
We're getting to that. All things in good time.
Okay.
But yeah, this is just some of the stuff that's going on, so you can see some connections to certain things that are going on in the rest of the gospel, but yeah, not as structurally connected to others. But we'll mainly be drawing on the feeding of the 5,000, as well as like I am the good shepherd and Peter's denial. So those will be the main things that we'll be drawing on as we move forward. Okay. So let's start heading into the text. And let's see, where should we? Okay, well, yeah, let's jump into this, but we won't have time for all of it, I don't think, so let's get at least a good sampling of it. So how about we have John chapter 21, verses 1 to 6.
Afterward, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Tiberias. It happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, called Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and two other disciples were together. "I'm going out to fish," Simon Peter told them. And they said, "We'll go with you." So they went out and into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, "Friends, haven't you any fish?" "No," they answered. He said, "Throw your net on the right side of the boat and you will find some." When they did, they were unable to haul a net in because of the large number of fish.
Okay. So we have very beginning here an afterword. So the Greek is more after these things. So implicitly, of course, the resurrection, but it could be John is trying to make this a true epilogue and go like, well, after everything that happened in the gospel, but most likely specific to the resurrection and also the appearance to Thomas. So as I was talking about, this is sometime after day 7 following the resurrection. Okay. So we also have he appeared there, and we go, oh yeah, Jesus appeared. The specific Greek word is manifested. This is actually a favored word by St. Paul in his letters. So he likes to use the word manifested with divine appearances of Jesus. Jesus manifested his glory, or things of the sort. And John seems to be using it in a similar way in his writing. So John is also talking about the manifestation of God's glory in some way in some of the earlier chapters. And it's also been used to refer to the glory of the resurrection. So
The
just
King James says showed himself.
yeah. So the Greek word is manifested. Or if you will, revealed.
Mhm.
So even here, like she saw like back in chapter 20 with Mary Magdalene, it's like at this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there. So it is more of a revelation that's going on. Okay. But yeah, specifically revelation in terms of Jesus' glory. So he appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee, Sea of Tiberias, and this was to perform a miracle because he's trying to show God's glory. Okay. So as I commented before, Sea of Galilee, Sea of Tiberias, it's the same place, but Tiberias is the name that comes in later on because of the city that became fairly famous after the destruction of Jerusalem. Okay. So, some of the disciples were together. So I mentioned Simon Peter, and this makes sense because he's a native Galilean. He lives in Capernaum, or his house is in Capernaum at least. That's where Jesus healed his mother-in-law way back towards the beginning of the ministry. So getting close to about 3 years before this point. And Thomas, he appears, and we don't know exactly why that's significant. Maybe we're drawing on immediately before where Thomas had doubted the appearance of Jesus, and now he's standing by as a firm regarder of Jesus has risen. Maybe that's why he's named and put towards the beginning. Nathanael from Cana in Galilee. So Nathanael also had a very significant explanation of Christ. This is going way back in chapter 1 where Nathanael was saying, oh, and I just want to get the actual wording correct just a moment. Rabbi, you are the Son of God, you are the King of Israel. So way back at the beginning of the Gospel of John, Nathanael has the big statement about Jesus, saying that he is basically the Messiah. But that's also, yeah, pretty close to the Galilee region. So if Nathanael's from Cana is where you had the wedding feast at the beginning, that's around the Galilee region. So of course Nathanael's there. So Simon and Nathanael being native to the area. You have the sons of Zebedee, so that's James and John. Again, they're also fishermen around the sea. And there's two other disciples who John does not name. So we have at least 4 of these 7 who are natives to the region. Matthew wouldn't be native to the region, but these would be. And then for the other 2 disciples, we can try and speculate, okay, who would these be? Would these actually be, let's say, members of the 12? And if they were members of the 12, why isn't John naming them? It would make sense that they would be Andrew and Philip because, well, Philip was the one who told Nathanael what was going on. Andrew is the brother of Peter, so it wouldn't make sense for Andrew and Philip to be the other 2. However, it's very weird that they're not named because they've been named all the time. Like every time that something is concerning them, they've been named. Even with the feeding of the 5,000, which connects to this passage, in the feeding of the 5,000, there are 2 disciples who have speaking parts before Jesus performs the miracle. Guess who they were?
Philip and Nathaniel.
Andrew and Philip. Andrew and Philip.
Philip.
I was going back to John 6. Actually, I should just show you. So going back to John 6 here. Jesus is being followed around by a huge crowd, and Jesus knew what he was going to do, and then he asked Philip specifically, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" And Philip goes, "Well, this would cost half your salary, like half a year's wages, to buy enough bread for even one bite per person." So Andrew, he speaks up because in John's gospel, Andrew and Philip are together a lot of the time. Andrew was the one who found the boy who had 5 small loaves of bread and 2 fish. Yeah. So it would make sense. It would make sense if the other 2 disciples were Andrew and Philip, but it does not make sense to us that they're not named. So it might, in fact, just be 2 of the others. We don't know. And then we go, wait a second. Where's the 4 other guys? And we don't have a word. We do not know. So this might be that some of them are just gathered around in Peter's house, and the others are maybe in transit still. They're still walking. Maybe they've gone out to do something else. Maybe they've even gone out to buy food. And then that's when Peter goes, well, maybe instead of waiting for them, maybe we should just catch something. But yeah, we don't have any word of what they're doing or where they are. Okay. So Peter speaks first because he's Peter. He's the one who's the impulsive guy, and so he exclaims. Oh, actually, no. I should pause before this. So, Peter's mentioned first here. Like we also find him first to the tomb, and we're about to reinstate him a little bit later on. Do you find, or do you notice any animosity or grudge against Peter for denying Jesus at this point? Like, no.
By the other disciples?
Yeah.
No.
Like, yeah. No, you don't find it here. And if you look to the other gospel writers, they also don't really comment on it. And John's the only one who has reinstatement of Peter. He's the only one who records this. So it seems that they're fairly forgiving of Peter for denying Jesus. And there could be different reasons why. Perhaps Peter didn't tell them right away that's what he did. So they don't know. He was in the courtyard. The other guys weren't there.
But was John there? Was John there?
No, he most likely he was in with the Sanhedrin as they were examining Jesus.
So only Jesus knew and Peter knew.
Possibly. Maybe. And that's a big maybe.
But also all the other disciples took off, so in that sense, they denied Jesus as well.
Well, Jesus, in John's account, it's specific that Jesus makes a bargain. I'll go with you if you let everybody else go. So they flee off into the olive grove. So, yeah. Peter's the only one who's trying to follow Jesus and openly says, I don't know him. So, or it could be that, yeah, they recognize that all of us would have done the same in the same time. So maybe they did know, but they didn't think as much about it. And there's also, in the Gospel of Luke, before Jesus appears to all of the 10, because Thomas isn't there, but before Jesus appears to everybody in the locked room the first time round, there's a mention in the Gospel of Luke that Jesus appeared to Peter, and just to Peter. And this is a very brief mention. Basically, you have the two disciples on the road to Emmaus. They go out there saying like, "Oh yeah, well, some of our women have said that the grave is empty." And then they talk with Jesus while on the road. They realize it's Jesus eventually. Then they run back to Jerusalem, start telling the other disciples, and the disciples are like, "Yeah, and Peter saw Jesus." And then immediately Jesus starts appearing there, and then we get distracted. So, what was that appearance to Peter all about? In any case, they could have preemptively forgiven Peter, or yeah, maybe they didn't know the full story. Hard to say. Anyways, so Peter, in true Peter fashion, goes, "I'm going to fish," and he isn't suggesting like, "Hey, maybe we should all go fishing." He's just like, "I'm doing this." So he's very much willing to go alone. But the rest say, and this seems to be everybody else, the other six. Maybe somebody was not as enthusiastic about it. We don't know, but the rest say that they're going with them. Excuse me. Thank you.
So this was at night? They stayed out all night?
Yes,
Is that typical of fishermen?
absolutely. But
Ah,
that's the preferred method. Yes. So I'll get to that in a moment. So first things first, Peter's saying, "Let's go out to fish." So
or I'm going.
we don't know the exact time frame on this. At which point, it's like, how long have the disciples been staying in the Galilee?
Galilee?
We don't know. It could be for days.
And that would be because Jesus said, I'm going to Galilee?
Yes, that is exactly what I said before, yes. So they're going there to meet Jesus. So they don't know how long it's going to be until Jesus appears to them or what they're going to do. So there could be different implications for this. So it could be that they don't have food. Because before, and this is for the sending of the 12, and then also for the sending of the 72. So both of those are recorded in the Gospel of Luke, for example. But when Jesus set up his disciples, you remember how he sends them.
2 by 2?
Yes, two.
and they're not to take anything. They are to be provided for by.
Yes. Don't take extra provisions for yourself. Don't bring money. Don't have an extra garment for yourself. Just go out as is 2 by 2. At which point now they're relying completely on the grace of the gospel to get them food. So if they go somewhere and somebody accepts them, brings them into their house so that they can hear about Jesus, well then that household is providing for them. So as a minister, like I recognize I would not have anything unless the church gave me money. the people providing for me here. And that's of course mediated more so by actual money instead of people giving me like physical goods like clothing and food. I don't know if I really trust people to pick out my clothes for me, but this is what we have for those who are following Christ. And not too far away from what would be going on with the priests at the temple either, because the priests would be completely dependent on the donations of the people of Israel, for the tithing of the people of Israel. So possibly they're remembering Christ's directions on the road, and they don't actually have any food with them. And yeah, so this I'll just make a note, Luke 9 verse 3, that's sending out to 12, and then 10:3 is sending out to 72. So another reason could be Peter living as a fisherman. Because this is how he spent most of his life thus far. Because as a male in society, you would be raised in the family trade. So for Peter, that would be fishing. So he's been doing this since he was a young lad. Peter, we don't know his exact age when Jesus called him. Most likely, Peter's getting to around the 30-year mark. So Peter, living as a fisherman, he's going, why don't I do this? I'm around where I used to be. We are taking the boat, not just a boat. So that, again, this could actually be that they own the boat, or Peter owns the boat. And since Jesus called him specifically, and this is from the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus called to be a fisher of men. I'll just put Matthew 4:19. Well, maybe I should just live as a fisherman, not a fisher of men right now, because I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. So let's return to my roots. And of course, if they're also hungry because they don't have food, it would make sense that it's like, okay, well, how do we provide for ourselves? Well, this is what I've been doing for years.
If you know fishing, you know that the fish don't eat it in the dark. So the fishermen go out and when it's still dark to catch the fish in the early morning light. True. It's true.
Yes. There's a different reason for going out at night for the Sea of Galilee, though. I'll get to that in a bit. Sorry, did you know?
No, I was thinking they were probably bored and anxious.
Yes.
We,
That's also, again,
yeah,
very
when's
much
he
Peter.
coming? Well, this is boring sitting around waiting. Let's just do something.
Again, yeah, very Peter. And then it could actually be like, not only do they not have food, but they don't have money. So for the same idea, price, direction, don't really have any purse about you, but also who carried the common purse for the 12? Where's Judas?
Judas.
Yeah, he's dead.
Okay.
So they really don't have any money. So Judas gone with the money.
All right, he threw it. Yeah.
Yeah. And well, that was the blood money that specifically he got.
Oh, right.
But yeah, he also had to go to a field, so possibly he used whatever money the was in the common purse to buy the field to hang himself, possibly. Anyways, so if they don't have any money, well, then this could be, well, let's earn a wage, because maybe they can't eat all the fish that they catch, but they could earn some money. They could also buy bread afterwards. That would be easier for them, because like this is the day and age before refrigerators. This is before you have ice readily available. They're in Israel, like during the spring. This is going to be like 40-degree weather if you're in the shade. So those fish won't keep. So depending on how many they think they're going to catch, well, maybe they'll eat some of it and then they'll sell the rest so that they have something. Now, even though they might not have money, again, the boat, someone implies that they're able to get a boat. So maybe this is a boat owned by the family. So either Peter and Andrew's family or John and James's family, or maybe they're using connections to borrow one. John has an in with a high priest even, because you brought up like with the trial of Jesus, where it was John was able to get in to see the high priest because the high priest knew him, so he had connections. So regardless, yeah, these are some options. As to exactly why, we don't know. But yeah, the rest of the disciples, they've been waiting around. Peter's giving some direction. So Peter's often represented the 12 before, so why not let Peter represent them now? Again, so this is Peter being deferred some sort of authority. I don't know how much authority you want to say to a random impetus to go fishing. But yeah, they're following Peter, it seems. And again, sons of Zebedee, also fishermen. So yeah, why wouldn't they? Okay. So they went out, got into the boat at night, and caught nothing. So now fishing at night. Now, for people in this day and age, would you assume they know how fishermen fish?
If that was their livelihood, they should.
Well, not everybody's going to be a fisherman, but if you're in a small, like if you're in a village, let's say 200-300 people, like, wouldn't you assume that you knew how people did what they did?
Yes.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty easy. Like maybe you're not the fisherman, but you know all the details about fishing because they're telling you. What else are you going to talk about in a small town? Usually gossip, but yeah. Anyways, so if John is saying that they're going out to fish, they would actually be assuming that it's at night. Now, the main reason for this at the Sea of Galilee is the wind. So when I was asking about the boat before and saying like, well, when does this come up in the Gospel of John? It comes up with Jesus walking on water at night, specifically. But you also mentioned, well, Jesus had to calm a storm. So why would the disciples be concerned about a storm?
They had plenty of them on Sea of Galilee.
Well, but I'm asking why would they be concerned about a storm?
Well, anytime you go on the water, you should be concerned about the weather.
Yes. And for the storm, they're saying, well, we'll perish. And you go, well, why would you assume that? Well, the boats in that day and age to go on a relatively small, maybe they'll have sex, but if you go on a boat at the Sea of Galilee, they're not going to be that big. You actually have people life size like that. And yeah, sure, you can fit 7 guys on that boat. There's not going to be a lot of room on that boat. So
Oh,
if you have a big storm and a lot of waves smacking against that boat, how concerned are you going to be about capsizing?
very.
Yes, extremely.
Mhm.
And that's really the reason for this, is that the storms are concerning because the boats in this day and age, they don't have really deep keels. You can't really have one on the Sea of Galilee because a keel is the thing that dips down here into the water to try and help against capsizing. They can't really have deep keels because the shore is right there. It's not a very deep sea. If you're going out into, say, the Mediterranean Sea, you'd have a deeper keel and like bigger boats. But yeah, not big.
And not stable, if it has a sail and no key.
Yeah, I think some of them had sails, some of them didn't. I'd have to look that up again because they actually did find first century BC boat perfectly preserved in the Sea of Galilee. Sometime, and when they discovered it, they started calling it the Jesus boat. It's like, well, it would have been around the same model, and it's close to the same year, but no. But yeah, it's that boat would be about the length of the diagonal of this room, so it's not huge.
With that many men and
Yeah.
and big waves, they could go under.
Yeah. So they'd be pretty concerned about storms. And the night would actually be the calmest time to fish.
Oh,
Yeah. And that's because, well, how is wind actually formed? Do people know this?
something about hot and cold air.
Yes. So this actually wind energy is actually a form of solar energy. Don't know if you knew that. So what happens is when the sun heats up the earth, it will heat things at different rates, and that depends on the actual color of these things and the specific heat capacity, but I won't go that far. So if you have something that's, let's say, black, that'll heat up a lot faster than something that's white. White will reflect a lot of this. So if you have things of a much lighter color, you'll get a lot more of that heat bouncing off the ground and kind of heating the air versus other locations where a lot more would be absorbed in the ground. And again, that also has to deal with specific heat capacity. That means how much heat it takes to, or how much energy it takes to heat a substance to a certain degree. And sand and dirt in general, but especially sand, it has a very, very low specific heat capacity, so it bounces heat into the air pretty quickly. So if you're around the Israel region, which has like sand and dirt and other stuff like that, and rock, like the heat bounces into the air fairly quickly, so you can get massive shifts in wind as things start heating up.
We don't have those sudden storms at the coast here, but not in Alberta. I remember being out on the lake in a small boat and a storm coming up suddenly. Gusty winds, and it was scary.
Oh yeah.
And I can see that could happen to a fisherman out there.
Oh yeah, no problem. So this is why they want to be in the safest time, which be night. It's the calmest time for wind. Yeah. So they're fishing at that time. However, everybody in John's day would know, hey, well, of course you would fish at night. This is what all the fishermen do. Why are you mentioning this? This is now going to be one of John's themes. You remember John talking about night, being dark at night? What's the opposite of being dark at night?
Light.
Light during the day. When did we hear about John talking about light and darkness?
Oh, come.
Jesus says, I am the blank of the world. There we go.
Mhm.
When does Jesus appear? Not at night, but in the morning. But even more specifically, I'll say John might be hinting at a very specific reference to this. So in John chapter 9, so this is the chapter with the man born blind. So we have a lot of plays, light and darkness, seen and not seen. But Jesus begins this where he says, as long as it is day, we must do the works of him who sent me. Night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world. So works of him who sent me, what would that be?
God the Father.
Well, that's who it is, but what are the works?
Saving.
Yeah, good works, spreading the good news. Yeah, yeah. So the things that we would associate with living the right life in the church. So if night is coming, like what would be night if Jesus is the light? What would be the night? Well, I know what night is, generally dark, but what is the darkness?
The end.
Yeah, evil, sin. So not quite the end. No, because Jesus, when he's specifically warning about this, he's also kind of hinting at when he's going into the grave. So he's the light of the world while he is with you. You can do the works of God, but when he is gone, aka when he's away from you, then no one can truly work. So he has to be in the world again as the light of the world. So the resurrection. So no one can work. No one can do the works of God there. No one can do the works of God. How successful were their fishing efforts?
Unsuccessful.
Dismal.
They caught nothing.
That would be unusual, would it?
I would say that it wouldn't. Yeah, it wouldn't be usual at all. They might find something or other because they're fishermen. They've lived around Galilee presumably their entire lives. Maybe they've gone to Jerusalem a number of times to the temple, but this is their livelihood. They would know kind of what is happening.
Well, when they're net fishing, they're not depending on fish biting the hook. right?
Yeah. So they have to throw where the fish would be, and it's like, well, okay, yeah, why wouldn't they be able to do their profession? So it's somewhat unusual. I don't want to say it's impossible, of course, but it would be unusual.
Yes, we calls them, Jesus is saying, children, do you have any fish? He's calling them children.
I'll get to that in a second. So verse 4, we have early in the morning. Now, this particular word does not appear anywhere else in the New Testament except in once in Matthew, but a cognate of that word, so a slight variant on it, actually does appear elsewhere in the Gospel of John. And guess what? One of those cognates comes up in the previous chapter, right at the beginning of the chapter, where before it was morning, the women went to the tomb. So already this is invoking the understanding of the resurrection. It also comes up one other time, and that's when Jesus is being led to Pilate early in the morning. But yeah, early in the morning is meant to make us think of Christ's death and resurrection. So night has come, they could do no work, and now Jesus is coming, so he as the light, the new dawn, he can bring about something that they could not have before have done. Okay. So night turning to day, of course, mimicking resurrection. Oh, yeah. And the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. Does that sound familiar?
Yes.
Yes.
Like
Which people didn't recognize Jesus?
the disciples going to Emmaus?
Well, that's a different case because they were kept from recognizing him.
Oh.
But somebody not recognizing Jesus right in front of their face.
Was he too far off in the distance?
Well, that's a possibility, but
The soldiers at the tomb.
he's calling out to them and they didn't know who it was. So presumably they'd know his voice.
When Christ arose from the dead,
Mm-hmm.
and he was seen in the garden, they didn't know it was him. But Mary did.
They didn't see him. They saw angels and they were frightened and went away.
Mary didn't.
But
Mary Magdalene. Thank you.
soldiers, okay, got the wrong person.
So Mary Magdalene didn't realize it was Jesus. And that's also, of course, recorded in the Gospel of John.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the people their lack of understanding. They've come from the night without Christ, and they're coming into the day, and Christ is dawning upon them, and they're still somewhat blind to all this.
They're not expecting him.
Yes, yes, I would say that would be more the force rather than the road to Emmaus. Those two disciples were kept from recognizing Jesus. The force here seems to be more that they just did not put two and two together. They needed something. For Mary Magdalene, that was Jesus pronouncing her name, and for the disciples, it's going to be a miracle. It's a miracle.
But it also says just as day was breaking.
Yeah.
They didn't recognize him, so it didn't start, maybe too.
Or not very light.
Not
Yes.
very light.
But who have they been waiting for goodness knows how long?
Jesus.
Didn't expect him there.
And again, whose voice is ringing out over the waters to them?
Jesus' voice.
Yeah. And again, they didn't recognize him until the miraculous. So presumably they should know. They should know. And that's not an indictment against the disciples. We also do this sort of thing in a very different way, where God speaks to us through his word and through various people in the church to try and guide us, and then we go, what are you talking about? Why would I refrain from this sin or not do this really stupid thing? So sometimes we don't recognize Jesus when we should. Anyway. Also to make us think of the resurrection, Jesus stood on the shore. Or was standing on the shore. So that word for stood, it comes up, and both appearances for the locked room. The doors were barred, and then Jesus stood there, and they're like, what? So
He wasn't walking around, he was standing.
Well, the suggestion, if this is correlating to the locked room, is that he just suddenly appeared on the shore. He miraculously appeared there.
Ah.
Yeah. And if it is echoing the locked room appearances, which were both Sundays, maybe this was a Sunday. That's a long shot, but it could have been.
Mhm.
Anyways. Oh yeah, where does that verb occur? Sorry, I just wanted to I want to make sure I know exactly what, because the NIV is doing weird stuff. Yeah. Okay. Oops. No, let me. There we go. Okay. Oh, the NIV doesn't have it. That's why it's confusing. NIV edited it up. Okay. So when the morning had come is not in the NIV. But the had come that's supposed to be there, that word, like the actual verb, is the word for creation in John chapter 1. It's not in the same conjugation. It's a very different conjugation. But the same word is the word for to create this and create this and create this and create this. So possibly that's trying to make us think of, like, this is creation or the new creation. Which honestly is what the feeding of the 5,000 was all about. The feeding of the 5,000 was supposed to be the paradise to come. So everybody remembers that, right? Remember that 4 years ago when we were talking about it? I was painting the picture of them laying down in the grass and everything with infinite supply of food and drink. That was supposed to be about paradise, right? Yeah. Okay. Anyways, so Jesus calls out to them, and as Nancy very correctly says, ESV has a different word than friends. Friends is not correct. I have no idea why the NIV is doing this. NIV, shame on you. The word should actually be little children. because not only is it the word children, but it's the diminutive for children. We don't really have this in English, but you can do this in Greek, where you can add in a letter somewhere and it makes it diminutive. So instead of children, you get little children. And yeah, John often talks about people in the church as little children, but he usually uses a different word. Sometimes he does use this word. The word here is paidia.
Isn't there other places where Jesus calls his disciples little children?
Not really. Not little children. No.
Or children, anyway.
But little children, I had to look this up. So it only occurs 2 other places in the Gospel of John. One was the little child of the officer that Jesus was healing way back in John chapter 4. Again, you all remember that from 4 years ago too, right?
Right.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, what you probably would remember is back in John chapter 16, Jesus gives a metaphor for the resurrection. He's talking like that it's similar to a pregnant woman who is in pain, but then she forgets her pain once her little child is born, because she has brought into this world a new life. So that would probably be more the idea here, where this is Jesus kind of giving you resurrection adjacent language. So children, little children, those I have brought into new life through my resurrection.
My mind went to Jesus saying that you've got to accept as a little child.
Oh, sorry, I just want to double check, because I think I was looking at that yesterday and it was slightly different than what you would expect, because
the disciples would be new in their faith at this point in time, and it would be little children in that sense.
Okay, yeah, so he does use the same word. I was just having trouble with it. But yes, it is permit the little children to come to me. So when that comes up in the Gospel of Luke, not John, actually Luke is the only one who uses the diminutive word there, because when this comes up in Matthew, it is just children. But Luke is using a technical term, so that's dipping into Luke being the physician. Is he uses a lot more precise terms. Oh, sorry, people on the screen. There you go. That's English. Luke is being very specific when he's bringing up that word, so he's referring more to like nursing infants. Jesus saying, "Bring the babies unto me." Somewhat. So unless you receive the kingdom of heaven like a baby, you cannot enter into it. So yeah, it definitely can be connected. It not exactly John's context, not completely outside of context, but yeah, I'd say John's mention is more about resurrection, but still, like, he refers to us as little children throughout. So maybe little newborns in the faith, if you will. Yeah. One. Okay. Yeah,
So
John.
they weren't offended being called children?
Being called babies?
Mhm.
We don't have a mention here.
Nope.
That's true, that must have been a little weird. Wouldn't be the normal way of addressing somebody you didn't know.
I know, yeah, to them, he's still a stranger, and he's like, hey, babies out there, have you caught any fish? No.
On the other hand, it could be endearing.
That
As a
is,
mother.
yeah, that is the what it's supposed to be. We have a different cultural context. Anyways, but the word. Oh, actually, Nancy, in the ESV, does it translate Jesus' question as "Have you any fish?"
Children, do you have any fish?
Okay, so
And the King James is meat. Have you any meat?
okay, um,
Yeah, any meat. That's
it's
what,
not closer to the exact meaning, but it's also not further away. So there's going to be multiple words being used for the concept here of fish as food. So all this very quickly. I'll keep the boat for now. Alrighty. So we'll have just the generic word for fish here. Then we'll have a little bit more. So kind of fish will come up a little bit later. I'll probably get into that more next week. But here, this would, and I'm translating it this way, and my brain is killing me. Like, yes, that's delectable, or a garnish. So the word there actually doesn't exclusively mean fish that Jesus is using. And it's a rare word. Does not really occur anywhere else in the Bible. Because, yeah, that's what's going on. Anyways. But the word could be literally translated as an eatable with.
eatable what?
Yes, because the word is prosphagon. So phagon would be something to eat, and pros is to or towards or in very specific context with. So so this is something you eat, but you eat it with something else. So like a garnish.
Ketchup on your hot dog.
Kind of like that, yeah. So it can be used of a fish to complement your daily bread, but like it doesn't exclusively mean fish. So Jesus is saying, have you anything to complement what you would be eating? At this
Like
point,
a sauce?
Hmm?
Like a sauce?
No, not a sauce, but like a side dish.
Okay.
So this is very much looking to the bread of life discourse, or bread of life in general, the feeding of the 5,000. I'll also put that in brackets, feeding of the 5,000. It's when again, you remember this 4 years ago, right? The John chapter 6 and us going through it in meticulous detail. So when the people were following Jesus, and Jesus says, no, you're following me because I gave you
Food.
to eat. What specifically does Jesus say? Like what did he give them to eat?
Bread?
Bread. Yeah, he's saying bread. And then Jesus says, I am the true bread from heaven. There's the bread of life. Sorry, I'm skipping ahead of myself. There's the bread of life, and if you eat this bread, you'll never be hungry again. And then they say, give us this bread always. And Jesus says, I am the true bread from heaven. Your fathers ate of the manna in the desert and died, but I am the true bread so eat my body, drink my blood. And then they go, oh no, and that's where you get Peter's statement, Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life, because they stick with him. Where were the fish and all this bread of life talking about?
The side dish.
I know, yeah, it was nowhere. No, they were always focused on the bread throughout that talk. So the fish at that time were just used to complement the bread. That doesn't mean that there were also fish left over, and the other gospels definitely talk about that. That there was not only bread left over, but there was also fish. So Jesus absolutely multiplied the fish to eat with bread. But yeah, the fish wasn't the main thing. There's something else to point to.
The bread.
So-
Which is totally opposite to our instinctual thinking.
Well, yeah, modern culture, yeah, no, we don't do that. But bread was the central thing for your consumption back then.
And then there's the Lord's Prayer. Give us this day our daily bread.
Yeah, because bread is being used to represent all food and things that would contribute.
Yeah, doesn't say give us our daily fish.
Yeah. No. I was a little bit too specific, and then it's like, well, can we be Christians if we don't eat fish? What if you have an allergy? Oh no.
It's like
Can you be?
manna in the Old Testament.
What's this? Can you be truly Christian if you have if you're celiac, then you can't eat. I can eat the gluten-free bread, actually. I'm a gluten-free Christian. It's like, no, you're a heretic, church. Then. No, so already we're having hints like towards the bread of life discourse, where yes, fish are important here, but they're pointing to something else. So Jesus is saying, hey, have you caught these things that would actually complement me? And I'll be getting more into this as we continue through this passage, but I'll just finish off the verse, and then they say, no, they don't really seem to have any reply, like any big thing other than that. And he said, no, we don't have anything. Yeah. It's noon. Do people want to do the 6th verse or we go? Well, people aren't getting up to leave, so we're doing verse 6. Okay. So Jesus says, throw your net on the right side of the boat and you will find some. I was trying to find like symbolic meaning to this, if there was any, and I can't find any. So I don't know, especially about this. The only really weird thing is the word right here is in the plural and not the singular, and me and the different commentators have no idea why.
Maybe because Jesus realized they were fishing on the left-hand side.
Well, that would be the implication that they were, but
Yeah.
why would you have the term right in the plural?
Would it be
You have
the
right
correct?
sides of the boat, there are multiple sides, like no,
Oh,
that doesn't.
okay.
There's port and starboard.
They weren't
right?
using those terms way back when.
Must have been using something.
But the right always seems to be the favorite side.
Yes.
The right hand God.
Absolutely.
What was that?
Yes, absolutely. The right is the favored. This is usually when people are having in terms of power or authority or favoritism. Say like even with James and John, they were fighting over who gets to sit on the right or the left side of Jesus, and yeah, so the right is always the favored side, and that makes sense for all us righties out here. I know it might be backwards in the camera there, but like yeah, you would go to your right side and put your right foot forward, and
Or is it the word right mean correct side?
no,
No, okay, just
this is
preferred side.
directional.
Preferred.
No, this is literally right side.
Right, yeah.
Just simply, they were fishing on the left and Jesus gave them command, whether they didn't obey it or not.
Yeah.
Even if it made no sense.
Mhm. And they also had no idea this was Jesus yet. So it could also be that it's like,
Might as
well,
well.
I know, we might as well. We haven't gotten anything. Well, it can't hurt. um, yeah, and yeah, so that might have been more of the motivation. As for right side, the word for side there, I was like, well, maybe this is side, like as in Jesus' side. Maybe this is referencing Mary God's that, where the blood and water flow. Nope, that's a completely different word in the Greek. So I have no idea what that might connect to, other than Jesus just saying, do this differently. Like the only other time there was really the word right there was when Peter cut off Malchus's right ear. I was like, that's a huge stretch to try and connect that to this.
Do we know what side Jesus was stabbed in?
Officially, no. A lot of artistic impressions would have it as the right side. However, me and quite a few other people would suggest it's the left side, because if blood and water are flowing out, then most likely it's, say, the pericardium around the heart, or fluid in the lungs. But if it's specifically the heart, then it would make a lot more sense for the Roman soldier to go through the left side than the right, because you get to the heart faster. So we're divided in church history, but we don't have a specific word. And now the disciples, having thrown the net onto the other side, they get a huge amount of fish caught in the net. We don't have the number yet. The number's coming in 153, but we get a huge number in the net, and so much so that they can't pull it aboard. And you have the weight of the fish, and the fish would also be fighting you, because why would they want to go into this place where they can't breathe? They're drowning in the air. So why? So yes, we can understand they might have an issue. Okay. But it wasn't that they didn't stop trying, because the word there, this is translated here in the NIV as they were unable. The word is more literally, they didn't have the strength, they didn't have the application of strength to bring it in. But more importantly, that verb is in the imperfect. The imperfect suggests a continuous action. So they kept trying to haul it under and they kept trying. So eventually, John realized, oh, it's Jesus who did this. And then Peter goes, oh, it's the Lord. And then, then he bails, and yeah. But I'll get to that next time. I'll go through verse 7 this time.
Little teaser.
Yes.
Yeah.
We got through 6 whole verses. This is the most we've got through in a long time. Let's close with prayer. Dear Lord, Heavenly Father, thank you for giving to us, of course, the promise of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. We ask you, O Lord, that as we continue in this world, that you give us the light of Christ, that we may do the works that you have given us to do, all the good things that you have called us to both confess with our mouths and do with our hands. As we do these good things, may the light of Christ shine throughout the world, especially to those that we meet, that they might see Christ and ask about the hope that is within us. In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen.